Hi, it's Erik Paulsen, and thanks for joining this week's Correspondence Corner. I also want to thank those that came to my Plymouth Congress on Your Corner event, where we had a lot of folks lined up to provide their insight, their advice on different issues, like a mini town hall meeting, if you will. Had a great hearing in the Ways and Means Committee this week on tax reform, in particular international tax reform, and how we can make sure we keep jobs here at home and in Minnesota rather than shipping jobs overseas. And I've had a lot of students visiting in Washington as well as tourists. And so a lot of folks from back home have taken the time to come and stop by my office. If you're coming out to Washington this summer, be sure to contact my office if you'd like a Capitol tour or if you'd like other insights on things to visit in Washington, so we can make sure that your visit is a memorable experience. We're going to jump right into our questions, though, and the first question actually comes from Lori Ann in Chaska, who wrote in regarding education, in particular in the area of science, technology, engineering, and math. She says, "Dear Congressman Paulsen, I read in U.S. News about the growing importance of STEM education to fill much-needed jobs. I agree with the author who writes that there are still an overwhelming number of occupations that require specialized skills and talent, but not enough qualified professionals who are applying for or filling these positions. What can you do to help push this important issue? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thank you, Lori Ann." Actually, Lori Ann, it's interesting because our students today are not just competing with neighboring states or neighboring communities. They're competing with students around the world, in particular countries like China and India. Actually, it's estimated this year that U.S. companies will create almost 120,000 jobs that require a degree, a bachelor's degree in computer science, but we're only graduating students in the number of 40,000. So clearly we have a labor shortage. I also met in Washington this week with students from Hopkins and Edina high schools that study robotics, a growing field in Minnesota. I've also spent time meeting with small business leaders and business leaders in general about the need to focus on the STEM fields. I'll continue to focus on that effort in the future to do what we can to make sure we fill those needs in the future. Also this week I received a phone call from Carol in Wayzata, and she called in on Tuesday to express her concerns regarding sexual assault in the military. Carol wanted to know what Washington was doing to ensure we protect our servicemen and women from assault. Well, sexual assault in our nation's military is unacceptable. Actually, the rate of underreporting is alarming. It's estimated that only about 14% of sexual assaults are being reported in the first place in our nation's military. The good news is, when Congress passed the reauthorization of the defense bill this week, we actually included provisions addressing sexual assault, in particular a provision that I co-sponsored that makes sure that victims or those that are familiar with sexual assault and report these crimes do not have to fear retaliation. There are also mandatory minimum sentences as a part of those that are convicted. I'll also continue to work with advocates on this issue like General Bob Shadley from Wayzata. He's an expert on this issue and has written extensively about it. I want to make sure that we identify, we prosecute, and we remove these perpetrators from the chain of command. I want to encourage all of you to stay in touch with me. Send in your thoughts, your questions, your ideas on Twitter or Facebook, or you can contact me on my website at paulsen.house.gov.